The Cincinnati Bengals travel to Jacksonville on Sunday. The line in this game I deem a little suspicious. Cincinnati only a 1-point favorite in this game, 42.5 the total. Just feels like the Bengals should be about 4 to 4.5 point favorite here, something like that. So when you see it at only 1, and when I see the public all week in Vegas, the public money has been pouring in on the Bengals, this makes me a little hesitant. I do think Cincinnati should win this game. I mean, if you break it down, Cincinnati has the better team. The Bengals have responded very nicely after their poor season opening performance against Baltimore. They've won their last 2 games. The offense has really picked it up, putting over 30 points on the board 2 games in a row now. And the Jacksonville defense has been surprisingly bad this year. This Jacksonville defense ranked 6th in the league last year in total defense, and they returned literally all their key playmakers. Now, they have had some injury issues. Starting linebacker Darrell Smith, one of their best players, has been injured. Derek Cox, the cornerback, has had injury issues, but Cox has had injury issues his entire career, so that can't be any surprise to Jags fans. Still, it's a little surprising how far that defense has slipped this year. Now, Jacksonville is coming off of their first win of the season, a thrilling, dramatic win over the Indianapolis Colts. Blaine Gabbert hooking up with Cecil Shorts on an 80-yard touchdown pass to win the game. That's the good news. Bad news, Jags fans, that was more yardage than Gabbert passed for in the rest of the game combined. And that's coming off of a 52-yard outing against the Houston Texans. So this Jacksonville offense was the worst unit in the league last year. And so far this season, they look like the worst unit in the league again. I mean, it's just the way it is. I know that the Jags fans, and because I know Jags fans now, right here we're in the BETDAQ NFL War Room. We're about 30 miles from Everbank Field here in Ponte Vedra, Florida. So know plenty of Jags fans, read plenty of Jags news, and I know that people were trying to be optimistic heading into this year. They were trying to say, well, Gabbert's shown growth and Mularkey has good history coaching young quarterbacks, and look at the preseason, there were some good things. But to be honest, I think if you gave a Jags fan a truth serum, they look pretty much this year just like they looked last year. Look like they're right on the road to 5-11 and the worst offense in the league, which is the team they were last year. However, this Sunday, Jags +1 at home. Again, this line feels suspicious to me. I see the public pouring on Cincinnati. In sports betting, it always makes me nervous when I see a bunch of the public pouring on one side. Following the crowd, not a wise idea in sports betting. And when you look a little deeper here, the Jags, despite them being a really struggling franchise for the last several years, they've been a pretty good team to back recently. 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games, and Cincinnati has only covered in 1 out of their last 6 road games. So some trends pointing toward a Jacksonville cover here. Again, I think when you break it down, when you look at the teams and you compare Cincinnati's defense to Jacksonville's offense and vice versa, I think you could come out of this saying Cincinnati is the better team and probably should win this game. But I'd be very nervous with a Bengals bet here. The things in terms of that public money, the trends we talk about, sort of point in that Jacksonville direction. And actually sort of as a contrarian play, I think Jacksonville might not be a bad play here this week. 42.5 the total. I expect this game to be relatively low scoring. Mentioned the Jacksonville defense has struggled so far this year. I expect them to get it together. I don't think they're quite as bad as they've looked through the first 3 weeks of the season. And I think the Cincinnati offense, they're not going to find the going as easy as it was last week against the Washington Redskins. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for them. Do not expect them to get to 30 again this week. And Jacksonville, we mentioned their terrible offense, and the Cincinnati defense, which was a top 10 unit last year, and struggled against Baltimore in week 1 and gave up some big yardage against Washington last week. I expect the Cincinnati defense to have some success against that limited Jacksonville offense this week. So the under might be a good option here, 42.5. I'm staying away from the game. Cincinnati, I think, is a better team, but Jacksonville feels like a weird play. We mentioned those suspicious lines last week. These games like Oakland is a short home underdog, Minnesota is a short home underdog, Arizona. We saw all those teams win at home, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Jacksonville Jaguars did the same thing this Sunday.